Don't we all love riding a bike? The sense of freedom, the wind blowing through your hair as you drive down the open road. After having come down the Highlands Highway, we were about to land in the city of Lae, the terminal port for all of the country's agricultural produce. Today, I'm taking you up the Markham Valley, or as the locals call it, just the valley. It is a wonderful area of open savanna grasslands nestled in between mountains on either side. In many ways, it reminds me of Africa. The conditions in the valley are very different from the rest of Papua New Guinea, as the dry season here can be quite severe, alternating with periods of heavy rain and flooding, a result of climate change, which is becoming increasingly difficult to predict. This has discouraged arable farmers from settling in the valley in recent years and opened the door for the cattle industry, which is still very small by international standards, but has a great potential for the future. The particular breed used here is a Brahman cross, originally from Australia, a very hardy animal and perfectly suited to the Markham Valley. And wouldn't it be great to have a locally produced steak on your plate the next time you sit down for dinner, especially if it means replacing expensive imports from abroad? It's 7 a.m. in Lae, and these people are not about to enter a factory, but the local market instead, where they will be selling the fantastic products from the Highlands region to eagle customers like myself. And just by looking at the quality of these fruit and vegetables, it comes naturally to ask why we don't see more of these on the local supermarket shelves, especially the ones in Port Moresby, where consumers, unfortunately, are left with a greater option of expensive imported products instead of our local ones. They may look perfect, but I'm not sure about their nutritional value and where they actually come from.
Any of those sort of apples here, or navel?
I have asked the same question to Patrick Dunks, the general manager of a large supermarket in Lae, as they seem to have a sizable corner of local products in comparison to other establishments elsewhere in the country. And I was wondering why.
Big problems is probably sometimes they can't keep up with volume. Some things happen, like the drought was probably a great example of that.
Yes, of course.
So we all struggle to get what our quotas were. You also have the problem with the specs of what you need, which, they're all coming pretty good. So like as you see with the tomatoes there, they're still a little bit green.
Yes.
So they last a little bit longer, and the ones that I use to transfer over to outstations is a little bit greener than that.
Yeah.
So they're not tomato paste by the time they land.
So you're supplying out to other Andersons in Kokopo and elsewhere?
Yeah, we've got the Kimbe branch, the Kokopo branch.
Some of the more perishable products like broccoli and lettuce, what are the main issues with them?
Broccoli's actually pretty good. It's quite a hardy vegetable. It can last a bit of a beating. The only problem, I suppose, would be is that a lot of the stuff that we do buy at the back is coming in big plastic bags. So, and it'll be the same with the carrots as well. So you get a bit of marking on the outside goods. So, but otherwise, it's pretty good. I suppose the only other thing is, they're not treated, so they probably don't last as long as stuff that you get in Australia. But pretty good.
What about onions? It's something that's been looked at a little bit lately in agriculture.
Yeah.
Production of onions. These are imported onions?
Yes,
I
they
guess.
are.
And,
Yes, they are.
What are the issues that you find with local onions?
Local onions, look, if you're slicing them up and using them when they're still sort of fresh, it's fine. Unfortunately, for a lot of companies, when you start talking about onions, we're talking about tonnage because we're shifting it to other branches. The local onions don't seem to last. Well, that's the reason why we sort of don't really use too much local onions, because they don't last an extra 2 weeks worth of travel in a reefer container. Yeah. And I'm assuming one of the reasons is because there's no real commercial curing station here in Papua New Guinea. Yeah. They can get dried out and that moisture get pulled out of them. Although I'm not an expert, so don't quote me on that. But that's and plus
so
Atlantic
basically
coast.
Post-harvest issues that are from the farmer.
Yeah. By the time you land imported onions here, although that is changing, imported onions are cheaper. So we still have to look after our customers, which is, if there wasn't a need for it, we wouldn't import it.
I see. Problems with the supply chain then. But what is so hard about putting together a proper refrigeration system when the fresh food sector in Papua New Guinea is worth billions of kina every year? It's not exactly rocket science after all. Uh-oh, I guess my question now becomes rhetorical, as Ley City is also known as the Blackout City. And not by coincidence. The funny thing is that the answer of a reliable energy source could be just around the corner. So I decided to visit a couple of friends of mine who run one of the country's most innovative projects. This is an experiment which, if successful, could provide a renewable energy source well into the future. Today, we're heading inland to visit two of my very good friends, Trevor Galgal and Gary Townley, who are involved in one of the most exciting new projects that started in Papua New Guinea in recent years. This is a wonderful, sustainable project which produces energy from biological material. We're standing here under a massive rain tree, a typical coastal tree of Papua New Guinea, where families often shelter from the hot sun underneath the shade of this tree. But what people don't know is that trees can be used to produce energy through a process of biomass. Biomass is the conversion of organic matter to energy, to produce electricity to feed into the PNG power system. This is not the first time it's been done in PNG, where the Bougainvilleans converted coconuts into diesel to use with their vehicles during the crisis that was there. It's also been done on Kaka Island. And overseas, the Brazilians use cassava to make a supplement called ethanol, which goes into petrol. Here we have a eucalyptus seedling in the nursery. This is the seedling that in 5 years' time will be more than 30 meters tall. This is what biomass is all about, rapidly growing trees and an efficient system. This little thing is grown in a jiffy pot. This is quite a marvelous little thing for nurseries because the root system is protected and has water around it moisture in there, and it also helps to retain the soil around the root structure of this little seedling when you have to go out and transplant it into the field. So this is the little seedling that will become the basis of the biomass industry. So Trevor, can you explain to me what biomass really is?
So with the trees that we have planted here, they will be later on cut down and used as firewood. The firewood will be used to boil the water, and then the steam generated from the boiled water will in turn turn the turbines and produce energy from that.
Okay, so you're producing electricity. How much electricity can you produce from what is already planted here?
Well, so far we have planted about 300 hectares, and that's just all research and feasibility. But we intend to establish up to 18,000 hectares of forest plantation here. That 18,000 hectares will later be used to produce 30 megawatts of electricity.
30 megawatts, my, that's an awful lot of electricity. That's more than enough to power the Gazelle Peninsula in East New Britain.
That's correct, because these 30 megawatts will be connected to the Ramu grid, and it will be sucked up to produce electricity to supply to Lae, Madang and parts of the Highlands region.
That's very interesting. Selecting the right species of trees is one of the vital steps in the success of the biomass industry. And Gary Townley, a forest expert, will explain why these genetically improved trees make a significant contribution, as ultimately they will increase the biomass yield and assure the success of the project.
We actually encourage the local people to harvest the dead branches for firewood. This creates a fire barrier from the leaf litter up the stem, and the bark of the tree is very fire resistant. So the people are welcome to come in and take as much firewood as they want. This here is another hybrid tree. You'll notice the difference in bark. It's not rough like normal Polita, white bark. And the leaves actually hang down rather than stick out like the normal Polita. So as a forester, I'm always on the outlook for a superior tree such as this. It's a nice one. The tree crop we're using is Eucalyptus Polita mainly. This is from Western Province in Papua New Guinea. It's not from Morobe Province, but it is a Papua New Guinea species. The eucalypt has grown beyond our expectations in the Markham Valley, producing over 25 cubic metres per hectare per year. We'll be growing it on a 5 to 7 year cycle, and then we harvest, and basically we don't need to replant for up to 2 rotations. Then we'll replace it with the next generation of genetically improved trees. If you look through any field, you'll notice that there's 1 or 2 trees that are much larger than the others. So we can actually cut those down and capture the coppice and propagate them on a large scale and plant them out, capturing that improved superior characteristic of that tree, whether it be higher density or faster growth or disease resistance, insect resistance, a number of factors we evaluate. The project was very fortunate during the early stages when we were conducting a countrywide pre-feasibility study to identify the Markham Valley as a potential site for the biomass project. One is it's close to Lae, which has a power deficit, as we all know, blackout city. 2, it already has good infrastructure with the Highlands Highway running right through the middle of the valley, so infrastructure access to the site. And then we found a huge area of underutilised grassland. There used to be ex-cattle farm, there used to be cropping and all the rest of it. The landowners, the Markham Valley landowners have been looking for opportunities to work with a partner to develop their land. Now, this is a good fit because culturally the local people are gardeners. So they understand the land, they understand gardening concepts. So we've just changed it around a little bit, and now we've gone to tree gardens, if you like. Small-scale biomass has a huge role to play in Papua New Guinea. By small scale, I mean a few hundred hectares where you can have a small gasifier and produce a couple of kilowatts. A 200-litre drum, a fuel drum, full of biomass, and that biomass can be coconut husks, it can be all sorts of bits of things like driftwood and anything else, with the right technology can power a small school, 3 or 4 classrooms with lights and so on, and a bit of electricity. So it's horses for courses. You match the size of the biomass solution to the small town, village, school, hospital, clinics, that sort of thing. One of the major pluses of the PNG biomass project, it is a PNG project. The fuel is grown in Papua New Guinea. It's all Papua New Guinea inputs from labour and you know, staffing, management, everything's inside here. The power is produced inside of PNG, it's used inside of PNG. We don't have to worry about offshore markets. The interesting thing about Papua New Guinea is, yes, it's an oil and gas exporter, but it is an importer of diesel, refined fuel, which it then burns in its generators to produce electricity. This does not make any economic sense to anybody.
Making economic sense will be one of the biggest challenges for this country's future. As Papua New Guinea too many times relied on its natural resources without proper planning into the future. Biomass is only one of the renewable energy sources available in Papua New Guinea, a country blessed with fast-running rivers and an abundance of sunny days, ideal for the generation of hydro and solar power. These renewables won't be enough to provide for all of the country's energy needs, but they will certainly assist in alleviating some of the shortcomings that we have seen so far. A reliable source of energy will in fact support business growth for manufacturers, producers, and also retailers. But ultimately, it will result in better choices for consumers, whom I'm sure would be thrilled to see more PNG produce available in their supermarkets.
What you see behind me is the port of Lae, the international and the coastal shipping. This is where all the produce from the highlands eventually ends up. This is the main port for distribution of goods from the inland of Papua New Guinea.
Although the expansion of Lae Wharf was welcome news in recent years, capacity still remains an issue.
Fresh produce has come all the way down from the highlands in an 8-9 hour trip by truck. It arrives in a warmer climate. It sits on the wharf before it's loaded into containers. And those containers may often sit on the wharf before they're loaded onto a ship. So that the produce is often very poor by the time it reaches its destination, such as Port Moresby or to Kokopo. Often as much as 50% of the perishable products can be lost on the way to those destinations.
But Lae has the ambition of becoming the central port for large vessels serving both Papua New Guinea and the Asia-Pacific region. A distant dream, perhaps, but I like to think that one day the rest of the world will get to know more about the fantastic products that grow in Papua New Guinea, as few other countries can compete with its variety and flavour. And if you've ever had the chance to taste a fresh pineapple straight from the hands of a street seller up in the highlands, I'm sure you'd agree with me.
So this is the Hagen baby banana?
Yeah,
is that the one here? We have a look at it. And inside, you will see the color is completely different from a normal banana, this orangey pink color. And the taste? Quite magnificent. Can I get one more? Thank you. And they sure as hell taste like onions.
Stay tuned for the next episode of Farming PNG in Kimbe, West New Britain, on Thursday the 4th of May at 7 p.m. on this network.